welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah.
You guys have sent in a bunch of funeral stories
Yeah.
that have honestly given me chills, and we're going to explore some of these haunting encounters with you.
It's pretty fascinating, isn't it? Like all these stories from the haunting secrets of funerals, true paranormal stories that will shock you, they aren't just about ghosts,
Yeah.
They kind of blur the lines between our world and the next, especially when grief and tradition get mixed in.
That's what I was thinking too, these stories make you wonder, when a loved one passes, do they really leave?
Right.
Let's just jump into the first one. The photograph and the family curse.
Yeah.
It all starts with something pretty normal. Santiago's grandmother's funeral.
Mm-hmm.
The family's there and they want to take photos to remember her, which makes sense.
Sure.
But what they catch in one of the photos is anything but ordinary. There's like a see-through silhouette of the grandmother just behind 3 of her sons.
It's like a ghostly photo bomb or
Wow.
something. But what makes this story really freaky is what happens next. Each of those sons in the photo ends up dying from a heart attack.
Oh, wow.
And before they died, they all had these super vivid dreams of their mom looking angry,
Oh, no.
almost possessed.
Like a horror movie or something?
Yeah,
It reminds me of that idea of, what is it, Subida del Muerto.
a dead person climbing on you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like this belief that a spirit can actually, suffocate someone who's still alive.
Oh, wow.
Maybe it reflects, those deep cultural fears people have about death,
That's a good point.
and the power that people believe the dead still have.
Yeah, it really makes you think. Could all that grief and guilt the sons felt turn into these scary nightmares?
Yeah.
Or was there something more going on, like a link between the photo, the dreams, and them dying so young?
Definitely something to think about.
For sure.
Makes you wonder about all the possibilities. Okay, so let's move on to the next story, the compadre's last call.
Yeah.
This one's about Lino, who loved hanging out at the cantina.
Ah, cantina stories.
One night, he runs into his buddy Marino,
Oh.
and they're just, laughing, sharing
Oh.
memories, singing songs, just like old times.
That's like a fun night.
Right. But here's where it gets creepy.
Okay.
Lino goes home and finds out that Marino actually died the day before.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine the shock? He spent the whole night with Marino, and now he's like, is this even real?
Yeah.
So he goes to Marino's wake to see for himself, and there he is in the coffin wearing the exact same clothes from the cantina.
That's wild. The story really makes you think about those deathbed visions people talk about, those encounters with people who've passed away. Happens a lot right before someone dies.
Yeah.
Like, are these visions a way for spirits to find peace, or maybe their last chance to connect with the people they love?
And what about Leno's state of mind, too? He was a regular at that cantina, so
Right.
could the drinks, known to blur the lines a little, could they have messed with what he saw?
That's a good point. Alcohol does have a way of, changing how we see things.
Yeah.
So did it open him up to a real encounter with Marino, or was it all just his grief playing tricks on him?
It's hard to know for sure, but thinking about these possibilities makes these stories even more interesting.
I agree.
It really reminds us that how we understand these events can be just as interesting as the events themselves.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's move on to a story that explores a different kind of connection. The scent of a father's presence. It starts with a son who decides to stay home from his dad's wake.
Okay.
He wants to be alone with his dad's things in his room, looking for comfort.
Yeah.
While he's asleep, he's suddenly woken up by the smell of his father's cologne.
Scent can be so powerful, especially when you're grieving.
It really can.
It's like it takes you right back to that person.
Exactly. And in that moment, the son totally felt his dad's presence.
Yeah.
But it doesn't stop there.
Mm-hmm.
He also hears footsteps and sees his dad's favorite chair rocking back and forth like someone's sitting in it.
Now that's when things start to get really spooky. Could this be like a poltergeist? A spirit messing with stuff in the real world?
Yeah.
Or was it just the son's grief, him wishing so bad that his dad was still there?
Yeah.
It's interesting to think about both possibilities.
It is, right? Maybe all those intense emotions actually, created energy that affected the room. Or maybe, just maybe, it was his dad saying goodbye.
These stories make you realize that we still don't really understand consciousness or energy or how the living and the dead might interact,
It's true. It really makes you think twice about just brushing off those weird things that happen to us sometimes.
Yeah.
All right, let's hear a story where a kid's perspective adds a whole other dimension to things. The child's terrifying truth.
Mm-hmm.
It takes place at a young mother's wake, and her 4-year-old daughter keeps saying that her mom is still there.
Kids often see the world in a way that's, like, less filtered. More open to things adults just ignore, you know? They're not as skeptical and don't try to explain everything away.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if their innocence lets them see things that we as adults just can't.
That's a question that's always fascinated people, researchers, those into the paranormal.
Right.
And this story definitely adds to that mystery. This little girl, she doesn't just see her mom, she hears her too.
Wow.
After the funeral, the husband hears his wife humming a lullaby in their daughter's room.
No way.
And when he asks the little girl about it, she says her mom sang to her all night long.
It's heartbreaking, but also, like, kind of sweet, you know?
Yeah.
Even with all the sadness and grief, the bond between a mother and her child still shines through.
Absolutely.
But the strange stuff doesn't end there. Footsteps, things moving around. Even a visitor says they saw the woman at the window.
It's like the line between this world and the next is blurry.
Yeah.
Makes you think about holding wakes at home. Some people believe that doing that keeps spirits around, brings them back to a familiar place. Maybe the mom's spirit was pulled back to her house, to her child.
That's a little creepy, but also kind of comforting, right? Like, even in death, a mother's love is still there.
It adds another layer to how we see these experiences, doesn't it? It's not all about fear or the unknown. It's about how powerful love is, those connections that go beyond our time on Earth.
You've just touched on something really profound there. Okay, so you added a couple bonus stories from TikTok, and I gotta say, they bring a modern twist to these classic themes.
It's cool how folklore keeps changing, like adapting to new platforms, reaching new people, shows that our interest in the unexplained is still going strong.
Definitely. The first story is about an encounter with La Llorona, the weeping woman,
Oh, yeah.
a figure that's a big part of Mexican folklore.
Right, it's like a cautionary tale to keep kids away from water at night.
Yeah, but in this modern version, it's even scarier, more
I
real.
can imagine.
So 2 brothers are walking home late one night, and they hear her crying. One of them, maybe feeling brave or a little dumb, taunts her, telling her to come closer.
Never a good idea with supernatural stuff.
Right. Tons of stories warn us about that. And of course, she shows up.
Oh.
But it's not a friendly visit. The brother who taunted her gets attacked.
Yeah.
But the other one, who's probably like, okay, I've learned my lesson about respecting the unseen world, gets away.
It reinforces the idea that folklore, even if some dismiss it as just superstition, can remind us about boundaries, especially with supernatural stuff.
Exactly. It's recognizing that there might be forces out there we don't understand, and messing with them can have consequences.
Absolutely.
And that theme of disrespecting the dead pops up again in the second TikTok story, The Mysterious Tent.
Oh, that one sounds interesting. Tell me more.
Okay, so picture this. A guy walks into a tent on a cursed mountain,
Ooh, that's creepy.
like the start of a horror movie, right?
Yeah, definitely sets the scene for something scary.
And it gets even weirder. The guy vanishes. A whole year goes by, search parties can't find him. Then out of nowhere, the tent pops back up, and guess who's inside?
The missing guy.
Yep. And he looks exactly the same, like that year never happened.
Wow.
But here's the twist. As soon as he steps out of the tent, he ages super fast and dies.
Oh, wow. That's like a reminder that some things are better left alone, that messing with forces we don't get can backfire big time.
Yeah, like a modern Pandora's box.
Right.
That pull towards the unknown is strong, but sometimes knowing too much can be bad news.
True.
These TikTok stories, even though they're short, they really add to our conversation. They link us to folklore and mythology, showing how those stories shape how we see the paranormal.
Yeah.
They're both warnings and a source of endless fascination.
Yeah, definitely.
And they remind us that these stories, passed down through generations, aren't just for fun. They reflect our deepest fears, hopes, and our attempts to understand these mysteries around us.
It's like looking at a huge tapestry of human experience. Connecting us to those who came before and reminding us that we're all part of this effort to figure out where we fit in the universe.
Okay, so where does all of this leave us? From creepy photos to ghostly lullabies, from cantina encounters to TikTok tales, these stories show that death isn't always the end.
Right.
That line between the living and the dead, the known and the unknown, can be pretty thin.
And maybe that's the most unsettling and fascinating thing about them. They make us question what we think is real and consider that maybe there's more to life than we can see.
They really encourage us to look into the shadows, to listen for those whispers at the edge of what we can perceive, and just embrace the mystery that's at the heart of being human.
And maybe even find a bit of comfort in the idea that even in death, we're not truly alone.
That's a beautiful thought.
Yeah.
So, listener, we've reached the end of our deep dive into these chilling funeral stories. We've explored ghostly photos, unsettling encounters, and those thought-provoking stories about what happens after we die.
Yeah, we've talked about how grief, tradition, and the unexplained all intertwine.
Right.
And it seems like the line between the living and the dead might not be as solid as we once believed.
So what sticks out to you from all these stories? What really hits home? Is it the chilling idea of spirits hanging around, or the comforting thought that our loved ones might still be watching over us?
It's up to each of us to decide what we believe, but I think it's important to keep exploring these topics, to
Yeah.
keep asking questions and listening to those whispers at the edge of what we can understand. You never know what you might find.
Beautifully said. Until our next deep dive, sweet dreams, listener.
Yeah, it's like they haven't learned to be afraid of the unknown yet.
Right.
Like they're still open to all the possibilities.
Makes you wonder if that's why they seem to pick up on things that we miss as adults.
I think so. It's like they haven't built up those walls of disbelief yet.
Yeah, exactly. So in this story, the little girl keeps saying she sees her mom.
Right. And it gets even weirder. She can hear her too.
No way.
Yeah. After the funeral, the dad hears his wife humming a lullaby in their daughter's room.
Oh, wow.
And get this, when he asks his daughter about it, she says, "Mommy sang to me all night."
Oh, that just breaks my heart. But it's also kind of beautiful, you know?
It is. It's like, even in death, that connection between a mother and child is so strong.
It's powerful stuff.
Yeah.
But the story doesn't end there.
What else happens?
There are footsteps, things moving around, and a visitor even claims to have seen the woman at the window.
Like she's still there in the house.
It's like the barrier between the living and the dead is super thin in that house.
Makes you think about those traditions of holding wakes in the home, right?
Yeah.
Some cultures believe it actually encourages spirits to linger around.
So maybe the mom's spirit was drawn back to her home, to her daughter.
It's a chilling thought, but also kind of heartwarming in a way, right?
Oh, right.
It's like even in death, a mother's love can reach out.
Yeah. So you mentioned you found some bonus stories on TikTok.
Yeah, I thought they were really interesting.
I bet. I love how these platforms are keeping those old folklore traditions alive.
It's pretty cool, right?
It shows that even with all the technology and stuff, we're still fascinated by the unexplained.
Definitely. The first one I found is about La Llorona.
The weeping woman.
Exactly, a classic figure in Mexican folklore.
She's used to scare kids into behaving.
Right. Like, don't wander off at night or La Llorona will get you.
But this TikTok story is a little more intense.
Yeah, how so?
These two brothers are walking home late one night, and they hear her crying.
Ooh, spooky.
And one of the brothers, I guess feeling brave or maybe just foolish, starts taunting her.
Like challenging her.
Yeah, telling her to come closer.
Oh, that's never a good idea.
No, pretty much every ghost story tells you not to do that.
Yeah.
And of course, La Llorona shows up.
Oh,
But it's not a friendly visit.
what happens?
The brother who taunted her gets attacked.
Yikes.
But the other brother, who probably learned a valuable lesson about respecting the supernatural, manages to get away.
That's a good reminder. Even if you don't believe in all that stuff, it's probably best to err on the side of caution.
Exactly. Don't mess with forces you don't understand.
Exactly. And that theme of disrespecting the dead comes up again in the second TikTok story, the mysterious tent.
That one sounds super creepy. Tell me more.
So this guy goes into a tent on a mountain that's known to be cursed.
Oh, already sounds like trouble.
Right.
Then he disappears without a trace. A whole year goes by and no one can find him. Then, suddenly, the tent reappears with a missing guy inside.
Wait, what?
Yep, and he looks the same, like no time has passed at all.
That's so freaky.
I know. But here's the really messed up part. As soon as he steps out of the tent, he rapidly ages and dies.
Like instantly.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It's a brutal reminder that some mysteries are best left alone.
Right. Like some doors shouldn't be opened.
It's a modern take on Pandora's box. The pull of the unknown is powerful, but sometimes finding out the truth can destroy you.
These TikTok stories, even though they're short, they really add a new dimension to our exploration.
I agree. They bring in the element of folklore and mythology.
Right, and how those stories shape our understanding of the paranormal.
They're both warnings and a source of endless fascination.
Totally. And they remind us that these stories, passed down through generations, aren't just for entertainment.
What do you mean?
They reflect our deepest fears, our hopes, and our attempts to understand the mysteries that surround us, life, death, the afterlife.
It's like they're a window into the human psyche.
Exactly. Like
Yeah.
we're all trying to figure out where we fit in this big, mysterious universe.
And these stories help us grapple with those big questions.
They do. So where do all these stories leave us?
Well, from those eerie photographs to those ghostly lullabies, from cantina encounters to creepy TikTok tales, it seems like death might not always be the end.
Right.
That boundary between the living and the dead, what we know and what we don't, it might be thinner than we think.
And that's what makes these stories so unsettling, but also so captivating.
They challenge everything we think we know about reality.
Yeah, and they force us to consider the possibility that there's more to our existence than meets the eye.
It's like they're inviting us to look beyond the surface, to listen to those whispers at the edge of our perception.
And maybe, just maybe, to find some comfort in the idea that even in death, we're not truly alone.
What a beautiful thought.
It is.
Well, listener, we've come to the end of our deep dive into these chilling funeral stories. We've traveled through ghostly photographs, unsettling encounters, and those thought-provoking tales of the afterlife.
We've explored how grief, tradition, and the unexplained all come together.
And it seems like that line between the living and the dead might not be as clear-cut as we once thought.
So what stayed with you from these stories? What resonated the most?
Was it the creepy thought of spirits hanging around, or the comforting idea that our loved ones might still be watching over us in some way?
It's up to each of us to decide what we believe. But I think it's important to keep exploring these topics, to keep asking questions and listening to those whispers at the edge of our understanding. You never know what you might find.
Beautifully said. Until our next deep dive, sweet dreams, listener.
Yeah, they really make you think twice about dismissing those weird experiences, don't they?
They do.
Yeah.
You know, after going through all these stories, especially the ones our listeners sent in, I feel like I'm looking at the world a little differently now.
In what way?
Like, I'm more aware of those little details, those things that could just be coincidence, but maybe not.
I get that. I've felt that shift too, It's like these stories, once they get under your skin, they make you more sensitive to the unexplained, like you're tuned in.
Yeah, exactly. It's like
Yeah.
there's this whole other layer of reality that's always been there, but I'm just now starting to see it.
It's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it.
It really is. It makes you wonder what else we might be missing. What other possibilities are out there just waiting to be discovered?
That's the exciting part, right? It's a journey of exploration, of opening our minds to new ideas and ways of understanding the world.
You said it. Well, listener, we've come to the end of our deep dive into these chilling funeral stories. We've explored ghostly photographs, unsettling encounters, and thought-provoking accounts of the afterlife.
We've talked about how grief and tradition can intertwine with the unexplained, and it seems like that line between the living and the dead might be a lot blurrier than we once thought.
So as we wrap up, I'm curious, what stands out to you the most from all these stories? What really resonated with you?
Was it the chilling possibility that spirits might be walking among us, or maybe the comforting thought that our loved ones might still be watching over us in some way?
These stories really make you think about life, death, and what might lie beyond, don't they?
They do. And while we may never have all the answers, I think it's important to stay curious, to keep exploring these mysteries, and keep listening to those whispers at the edge of our understanding.
Beautifully said. Until our next deep dive, sweet dreams, listener.
If you enjoyed this video and want to dive deeper into more cases like this one, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to like the video if you found the story compelling, and share it with your friends and family who might be interested in true crime and mysteries. By subscribing, you'll stay up to date with all our latest content and join a growing community of curious minds exploring the most fascinating cases. Click the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything.